noticed you are regular Adoption Hug attendees. So it's nice to see you, Sam. I know you come often as well. So it's nice to have you all here. Obviously, our HubSpot user groups is focused around adoption, and today it's about apps. So that's why we've got Dan with us today. So I'm going to introduce Dan in a second. I'm going to start sharing my screen and we can get started. As Chris has already mentioned, we are hard stopping at quarter two. He has to hard stop at quarter to 3 because he is going to run the Super Admin Bootcamp. So if you're a CRM owner for your business and you're not on the Super Admin Bootcamp, we'll include a link. Chris, if you can pop a link maybe in the chat.
We don't have the next sign up. I think this cohort's full. The next cohort will be January 2025.
Okay, so connect with Chris and he'll post about it in January.
Keep an eye open. It's a 6-week course taking you through all the basics of administrating your HubSpot portal.
And Dan is on it as well, so perfect. Right, we are going to start. So today, as I mentioned, we've got Dan with us. Dan, do you want to just introduce yourself because you'll do it much better than I can?
Yeah, I can do. My name's Dan. I co-founded Orchart Hub with Austin, and we run 2 applications on HubSpot, so Orchart Hub and GeoMapper, which we'll obviously go into in a little bit. Started out using HubSpot in 2014, and that's where the 2 ideas for the applications first came about, because we needed it for ourselves and then offered it to the HubSpot community.
I feel like the best apps are built by people that saw a need for themselves, they've developed it, and then they pushed it out to everyone else that needs it, because you've obviously seen a gap that everybody needs. It's not just your own business.
Yeah, so because we both worked for a software company, like another software company, it was like a side project for a while for both of us, for me and Austin. And then by 2019 we'd got it to a place where there's enough HubSpot users using it that we could go full time. So it's a proper side hustle to full time move. So it was an exciting time, and HubSpot's come a long way since then.
It has changed a lot. Even just, I was saying to Dan a minute ago, I just had my sabbatical, a month off, and I've come back and there's like 80 updates I need to go through. It's changing so much every single week. So can't wait to see your apps in action. For people that don't know, I'm Bridget. I'm the marketing manager here at BabelQuest. I just make sure everybody sticks to their time and make sure we don't run over. And Chris, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Probably the one that's in danger of running over. I'm Chris Grant. I'm a consultant here. I implement new HubSpot portals and fix broken ones, the ones that give you all headaches. And generally, my ethos is all about driving adoption, getting people to pick up and use the tools that they've got. And the more people use things, the easier you make it for them to do what they need to do, the more impact they can have for their customers or their prospects, then the more likely you are to get ongoing adoption. And it's something that you can keep doing as well. I think a lot of people sit still on the adoption front and just build HubSpots, configure it, and then kind of treat that as, that's it, 100% ready, let's run it for 3 years and see what happens. So use apps.
Use apps, exactly. And so before we do dive into the nitty gritty, why are we talking about apps? Because as Chris has kind of touched on there, HubSpot feels like a lot nowadays. It's super powerful, but actually getting people to use it consistently and to the best of its kind of ability is really, really difficult. It's a whole different story. So people toggle between different systems, there's missing data, people are feeling frustrated. So we want to make sure that it's less of a chore for people and it feels a bit more customized, even though these apps are kind of out of the box. And that's where today's talk kind of comes in. So we're going to try and bridge the gap between HubSpot features and what your team needs so that everyone can work smarter. And just to give you an idea of the number of apps in the ecosystem, it might be a bit blurry, definitely not going to be able to read all of these logos, but that's because there's over 1,700 different apps in the market.
1,739.
1,739 to be precise. But that might have changed in the day that we put that number down. And it's a huge amount, and knowing where to start is really, really difficult. And we could go off on a huge tangent and talk about bespoke to industry and all that, but that's not really helpful for the vast majority. So Chris is going to start off with the basics. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll let Chris do some talking.
think it's just important to point out in the app ecosystem there, those are the either the sort of native apps that have either been built by HubSpot or by people that know their stuff. And the advantage of those is they are click, take a couple of minutes to install if you've got all the right passwords. And if something goes wrong, then you know who you can get support from. So worth being aware of that. If you've got disparate systems and there is an app that connects them, then connect them, because then you can enable your team with data flow and cut down on tools. Table stakes. This is the sort of very basic stuff. But your table stakes that a lot of people miss are things like connecting emails. Getting your team to connect their emails to HubSpot means that when they're in Google, Outlook, they've got access to the various HubSpot tools. So if you look here, I can access my templates, I can access my meetings if my calendar's synced, I can access tasks, snippets, documents, payments, and I can also use the Copilot AI that's now baked into HubSpot. So in terms of adoption, typically you have people that may not want to go into the CRM. You can give them the CRM wherever they go, and now you've got the sidebar extension. So when you're on a website, when you're on any website, you can open up HubSpot and create a company record directly from there. So I think, and all of these things are things that people typically knew about, forgot, and aren't telling their teams about. And they're things that we can really bang the drum about. Did you know you can get HubSpot to write emails for you? You may not want to, but the functionality's there.
Just on that, can I interrupt? Just because I was looking at all the submissions that everyone put on the form, and one of the questions we asked was, what's an adoption issue that you're having? And a lot of people said they've got old school sales teams that don't like CRMs. And I think that's a really good point that you just said about it's bringing the CRM into something that they're more comfortable with, like email. Is it comfortable with that now?
A top tip on the email front is that you can help your team to build a never log list. I think a lot of the time when you see people don't want their emails logged, and sometimes when you drill down to the actual reason, it's because they're using the work email for booking a dental visit or buying a house or something. So what you can do is help them go into their settings and build a never log list, so they can put their secret lovers, mistresses, dentists, doctors, whoever it is on there. Those emails don't get logged. And the other one is that sometimes you go into a portal where they haven't blocked internal email domains, so that you've actually got all internal emails being logged. That's horrifying. So little things like that are really going to help your team to sort of do the adoption thing. And I think the other thing is that it's not just the features that you'll have seen when you did the initial, integrating with Outlook, that all of these things actually feed into some of the new features. So without going down too much of a rabbit hole, I've got my sales space, and because my calendar is integrated, I can see my calendar. That's really, really powerful, because my email's integrated. Then I can just go into a lead record, and I can. So it opens up all these other things that we can use to enable our teams. And that would be more fun if it wasn't loading quite so slowly. But it is these sort of table stakes apps like Slack, Teams, Slack and Teams, and you can use workflows. You can use workflows to push information into Slack. So again, draw people into those HubSpot records, make it easier for them to do what they want to do, and that's really just solves a lot of these adoption issues that actually, if you dig into, are not really issues. They're just lack of knowledge on behalf of some of the team. So make sure your team have integrated all their table stakes apps. And the other thing is that if you go into your audit log and your security center, you can actually see who's disabled their emails, and who's not got their calendar connected. So you can actually, you can fix it. You can help them and ask them what their problem is, help them build an Everlog list. So table stakes, your email, your internal messaging system, and your meetings, really, really powerful, really important. And you should definitely switch all of those on and do those integrations straight away. Do you want me to talk about another app I like?
Yeah, yes. So those are the table stakes. So I think, Chris, are you now going to talk about Sidekick? Yeah, which I know you've spoken about on LinkedIn before, so people might have seen that before, but we can actually.
I've definitely spoken about this on LinkedIn, and I want to give Dan lots of a good slot to talk about all the good stuff, because he's very big in the app community and probably knows a lot more about these than I do. But I think it is also about looking out for apps that provide a little bit of extra functionality to your team. I found something called Sidekick, which you can find in the App Store. Quite hard to demo it because you're basically connecting it between HubSpot and, in this case, Slack. But so I have this app, Sidekick. I've integrated it with HubSpot and Slack. I've mapped my users, and I can create workflows that give me extra functionality, extra things that I can do in Slack. No idea how I can share an image of my Slack, but I'll try that in a minute. But essentially what we can do is, you'll see here, we've got things like missing job title, missing close date. And what these workflows are doing are identifying data gaps and pushing a message into a Slack channel saying, your deal's got a missing close date. But the person can update the close date in Slack. And that's just another nice, slick, easy way of enabling probably those more experienced salespeople that have grown up in a different world and don't like all this tech. I don't want to go into the system. Well, let's use an app or a tool to bring the system to them. If they can update the deal value directly in Slack and have that update the records, the relevant reports, the reports then sent to their manager, then they're going to lean in and they're going to get really excited about the possibilities of what they can do. So we can share a video of how this all works in a bit more depth. But essentially, all it does is really it sends a message to Slack. You can choose the property that you want them to update, and they can just update that property, and it will happen directly into HubSpot straight away. So that's one of my faves. I think it's a nice, slick and easy way to do things.
Good name as well, Chris. That's the original HubSpot CRM name.
When I was initially found out about it, there's quite a lot of things called Sidekick now. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. That was the first thing that brought me into HubSpot. Was I came to BabelQuest and to sell something, and Eric said, "Here, look at this," and he showed me Sidekick, and I went back to where I was working. And suddenly I could see people opening my emails, and for that glorious period when you rang somebody, they'd say, "Oh, I was just reading your email," and you could actually just go, so really nice. But I think for everybody, just getting your teams to connect the basic apps and think about some of the problems they have, some of the objectives they have, and how you can potentially solve those by extending HubSpot's functionality is really powerful.
And that kind of leads us on really nicely to Dan. So we've kind of talked about table stakes apps. It's a mouthful for me. And now let's move on to more of those bespoke ones that we've just talked about, Sidekick. So Dan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So yeah, I think maybe just in a quick summary, like the three main apps that we've seen in the app ecosystem over obviously a decent length of time. One would be like the ones that HubSpot have built the integrations with. So some of those, like Chris gave as examples, are in that category. The other one is you've got applications that are maybe big software as a service applications, and they build an integration with HubSpot, pull the data out, and you have to work in their kind of in their area, and then have the two connected. And then we sit in the middle, and there's increasingly more and more app builders for HubSpot in this category. And and Diana is one of those on the chat with Supered, and we're going to use some other examples in a bit as well, who have specifically built for HubSpot. So the whole integration is very, very tight with HubSpot. So I'll give you a couple of examples in our 2 applications. So there's 2. The first one is Orchart Hub. Now this helps with the your very big accounts, the ones that you're selling into where you've got lots of key decision makers, and it's important that you've got everybody engaged in order to win that deal. And so there's 2 parts that we help with on this side. So one is the org chart side. So we're inside HubSpot here. We've got a company profile. We open up Orchart Hub from the right-hand side panel. No extra login because it's built specifically for HubSpot. And I'm just going to go on full screen because it'll be a bit easier for you to see. And here, what we've got is on the right-hand side, we've got contacts that are from the company. So they've been pulled into Orchart Hub here. And we've got a couple of ways that we can start to map out the key decision makers. So we can assemble by hand, we can hit the AI button there, or we can use the blueprints. This we introduced last year and went down really well, so much so that it then spurned off this. So if I click on this button here, what it's doing is it looks at the job titles of the company, of the contacts within that company, and starts to infer where they should sit within the business. So if you've got here, it doesn't always get it perfect. You see like this marketing ops, it's not really sure where to put it. So we can just go, okay, add as an employee to this person here, and it puts them in the right place. Let me do that the other way around. Add manager. We'll put them over here just for a second. And it'll put them, you can move them around and put them in the right place. You can put relationship lines between the contacts, lots of other stuff, which I'll show you in just a second. But the other thing that has picked up really quickly, just delete this chart and just do another one quickly, is the blueprint side. So this, what we experienced is when we introduced this piece, more and more of our experienced customers basically said, we know who our buying group is. So what we want is to be able to create templates to make sure our sales reps are all working in the same way. So that's what they're doing. And so sales leaders are basically creating these templates, making it nice and easy for the sales rep to go, okay, well, this is the buying group that I need to map out. It looks at the job titles again, and then starts to auto fill it and make suggestions where there are gaps, like this one here. So on which one do you want? Click on accept. So I think, Chris, you mentioned, and Bridget, you mentioned earlier, like there's sometimes a reluctance for some sales reps to use the HubSpot CRM or any CRM. And this is a good example. Just in a couple of clicks, they can basically map out who they're working with. And maybe because we're visual people, like we've always want to make it very, very visual. So it's easy to see who you're dealing with and manage that data. So a couple of just extra pieces just in a few minutes, just to show you on the org chart side. This is very popular amongst our customers, mainly for deal reviews. So when you are working on a deal and you want to see who's engaged and who isn't engaged, then you can see within here, okay, we've got these 2 people engaged. That's not good enough to land a big deal. You need everybody engaged within it. And so it's kind of a quick highlight. And then you can see also marketing activity as well. And you can see, okay, in this particular situation, we've got an opportunity to engage this person here. And it's worth mentioning, this activity is all based off some of the stuff Chris mentioned. So if a sales rep is obviously tracking that within their emails or it's connected to their calendar, then it's logging that information. So another good reason to have it all connected.
That's fantastic.
I love it. And from like a marketing point of view, I'm just thinking like ABM campaigns, this is going to be so powerful for that as well.
And you're almost driving sales and marketing alignment, aren't you? Because you're kind of able to say, well, these people haven't engaged with marketing. Let's talk to marketing. Are they sending any? Are they a marketing contact? What are they interested in? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other piece, like from an ABM perspective, is if you see here, this is the buying role. So that's a HubSpot contact property. We have a 2-way sync with that property. So if I could tag someone up here as a budget holder, that syncs back into HubSpot. And that's the other bit that helps. It's like powered by the sales team, but the marketing team can then use those roles to then send very targeted messaging to the right individuals. Like a budget holder will want to see ROI content, whereas maybe a decision maker might receive slightly different information than that. So yeah, that sort of stuff can be helpful. Yeah, one other quick thing on Orchart Hub, just very, very quick, because I know only got a few minutes, and then I'll show you GeoMapper. This is the other part. So this is for the very, very big accounts that you work with, where you might have a land and expand model. So you land in one part of the business and then you expand across. It's a two-way sync with HubSpot's related companies, parent-child relationships. And so what it does is, again, because we're visual people, we wanted to show that connection. Let me go on full screen again. So what we did was we opened up from this business. And in this case, we can now see, okay, well, actually it's a grandchild of Amazon, and you can see the full business here. You can add parent-child relationships in here. So if there's already relationships already there, it will auto build it, but you can search it and then you can add relationships in. And then the other big thing is this. So very similar to heat maps, except on a deal level. What we do is we show you what deals you've got open. So how much could that account be worth to you? What have you done so far? So that's the close one deal. That's the land. And then here's the expand that you're working on. And these links take you straight to the deal inside of HubSpot. So again, like sales manager deal, reviewing with the account executive on the account itself, trying to manage, okay, well, are we close to getting this deal done? Where are we at? How big can this account be worth to us is really important. And you can change by pipeline as well, because if you sell multiple products, then you can drop that down and change the time frame as well.
That's amazing. I think you beat Salma put in a question about, does the tool support company, organization, or any contacts? I think you've just answered that, because I don't think what point is there's a lot of bottleneck with a lot of sales reps across 30 different countries, and they need to view the parent-child relationships. And I think this pretty much covers everything that you were just saying, Salma. So we love it. And when you talk about that you're a visual person, Dan, I think most people that use HubSpot and enjoy it are also visual people. I think we're all in that one bucket. So this is amazing.
Well, yes, otherwise they'd go and use Dynamics or something like that.
Well,
I love the fact that you can do the mapping, that the mapping's both ways, because one of the big things you tend to hear people saying is nobody's creating the relationships between the companies. We don't know where we are. Our teams don't know, and they don't talk to each other. So you're almost opening up that extra bit of functionality.
Yeah, and it is difficult. Like, to understand that from this right-hand side panel, it is quite difficult, especially if you go multiple levels deep. Like if you're working, we have quite a few customers that sell to like pharmaceutical or banks, and they can go so deep with the structure. So yeah, it certainly helps in that regard. And then second application, there's lots more I could show you in Orchart, but I'm mindful of time. Second application that we built. We built this again because rolling back to like 2015, 2016, when we were using HubSpot for the first time ourselves, and we were trying to figure out what we needed inside our HubSpot account. We needed to see where our customers and prospects and any other filter, where they were positioned in the world. The reason for that was because we had a lot of US customers, and we were flying over to the US and trying to visit and figure out how we could be most efficient. So GeoMapper, just like Orchart Hub, opens up from the right-hand side panel. Everybody gets access to it within your HubSpot account. We've got free plans on both of them, so please have a play around with both of them when you get the chance. I'll just jump to full screen again. So you open up, and on the left-hand side here, think about these as lists, because they basically are, or filters. So there's 4 things that you can map inside of GeoMapper: companies, contacts. Both of these, there are HubSpot default address fields already in place on HubSpot, so super easy. This one is more unusual. Not many customers map deals, mainly because there's not any default address fields on there, and it's a bit unusual, but some customers do. And then this last one is custom objects, which more and more customers are mapping custom objects. This being one example. We've mapped out HubSpot offices, so we know where they are. That's one of them. And then, if I jump back to here, so the way you create these lists initially is you pick and choose what you want to map. And so you create this, and you'll see the UI is pretty similar to HubSpot. It's almost identical. You can pick an existing list that you've already got inside your account, or you can start to create a filter, and it goes cross-object as well. So you can basically build out whatever you need within there. So I can let me go back to categories. I can go, okay, or find my life cycle stages as an example. And then I can add another filter and go as deep as I need to. And you can create as many of those filters, and we see customers do lots of different things within there. Just by way of just showing some things that are helpful from a tight integration standpoint, is if we zoom into London just for a second. So there's an event in London next week, a HubSpot event called Grow, and we'll be going to that. So if anybody's going, let me know. I'm happy to meet up. One of the things you could do within your account is, and this is useful for sales, but it's also useful for marketing as well. If you're traveling into an area, one of the things you could do is click into your list. So this is the opportunities list. Draw around an area. So I'm going to pick the east of London here. Click on done. So let's say I'm visiting the east of London, which I will be next week. You can draw around it. And then what you can do is go, okay, well, I actually want to export that back into HubSpot. So click on export, and you can push it back as a company list, or most people push it back as a contact list. So they'll go export to HubSpot, and there's no CSV or anything like that. We keep you inside of HubSpot, and we take you to the list functionality straight away. So obviously there's lots of things you can do from here. One of the things we see is quite a lot of customers will put them in a sales sequence, basically saying, I'm coming into your area in the next 2 weeks. Here's my calendar invite. It'd be great to meet you, that sort of stuff. And then from a marketing perspective, the Grow event is a good one. So like if you're going to an event and you want to meet some of your customers and prospects in that area, you want to draw around that area because they're the ones that are most likely to attend. And obviously approach them that way. Same with sort of very focused geolocation marketing as well. Like maybe you've won a customer in that area and you want to let the prospects know that we've got this case study, or you want to identify the win itself. So yeah, I know.
Cool. This is really, I'm like making notes in my head about what I need to go and do after this session. This is amazing. And if anybody's got any like use cases that come to mind straight away, put them in the chat as well, and we can talk through them. That's amazing.
I just like the visit planning that's a real game changer, because again, one of the reasons that the sort of field sales teams don't tend to adopt or opt in things, because they'll be out on the road a lot of the time. So if they can go in, plan their route, use their connected email account to send out template sequences, and actually get lots of visits on a day. I remember my early sales days, you weren't allowed to go out of the office unless you had 5 visits in the same area that you could display and show. And then the boss would say, okay, we'll sign off the budget for that. And so
this ties in really nicely with the way marketing and sales is going in terms of like one-to-one personalization is just, that's the only way to outreach and field sales and marketing teams. Like Dan has just said in the chat, working together, like super powerful. Amazing. Right. We have gone over those. I think, Chris, are you going to be talking about the
we'll touch on it briefly, because again, I think you need to have that sort of awareness of where all this stuff is, because you want to add it, and HubSpot gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And
exactly.
but there's, as you can see here, there's you've got your card library, and you've got this opportunity to discover app cards and add them. So yeah, we've got PandaDocs installed, but you've got things like Fathom, and I know Dan's going to talk about some more of these in a bit. But we can search for them in here, and we can very simply add them to HubSpot. And what you end up with, I go into a record itself with numerous clicks, and I open up my sidebar, you'll see that I've suddenly enabled my team with lots more things. I mean, I've got one I like, which is Clone Attack, which is one of the Happily apps. But Orchart, and then we've got PandaDoc, we've got GeoMapper. But you can add these to the sidebar when you're thinking about how to make the sidebar good for a particular team. You don't have to add them all. and always go with that mentality of what's going to be crisp and clean and help somebody do their job. We don't want a massive long left-hand record in the same way. We don't want to have lots and lots of cards, but what we do want is the things that are particularly relevant to any given person's role. If they can find what they want, and it's easier to do it in HubSpot than to go into another system, download a spreadsheet, do something else, then they're going to stay in HubSpot. And that is that sort of North Star of adoption. It's making it easy for them to use, getting them to talk about it. So we'll encourage you all to think about what apps you can add to your portal to extend the functionality. Obviously, with the caveat that just because you can doesn't always mean that you should.
That's a very good caveat. That's a very good one.
it's very easy to go down that route of, I'm going to give my sales team everything.
Going to get so excited.
You get terribly excited, you get carried away, and then you find your sales team spend half the day playing with their apps, and they don't actually get their day job done. So little bit of care there, but you can, like I say, you can find your apps. It's just literally a case of going into your settings and your objects, and whichever object you want to work on. You got your record customization. If you're on the call and you haven't looked at the record customization options for a while, then do go in and have a go. But just click on your card library, and you can start looking at some of the available apps cards that exist. And you've even got a link where you can discover and find that list that we showed you earlier.
And there's a couple more recommendations that Dan has got. And actually, I think we've used all of them. They're great. But I'll let you talk through. I think there's 5, isn't there?
What's your favourite?
Yeah, start with your favourite.
I think we've got. Yeah, Chris, I think you've got a similar taste to us. Obviously, we're a bit biased in terms of where teams are specifically built for HubSpot. Like, it does make a big difference. So, like, Arrows, for example, is a great one in terms of like Daniel Zarek and his team. He's a good follow from the customer success side traditionally, because they do it's an onboarding. For any teams that are doing like big onboarding for customers, but they have just got into doing sales rooms as well, which is a very natural fit, because you can go from like the sales stage and then to onboarding, and you want a smooth transition between the two. So and then Supered, which I know Diana knows very well. So Matt and the team there are doing an incredible job. Specific, like Diana could speak to this better than me, but like in terms of sales process and helping teams adopt HubSpot specifically, they're doing a great job. And happily, that she identified a few times, Chris, they've got a ton of apps now, and everything's built specifically for HubSpot. In fact, they have some ex-HubSpotters like Max Currin within the team, as an example. Dax and Tyrone have been doing it for years, building on HubSpot. So another one, and then a new one that's relatively new anyway, sort of the last I think it's last sort of 8 months or so, is Qualify. They
all over LinkedIn. I see Qualify all over there.
Yeah, they do. I mean, duplication is a tough one in any CRM, but the way they've done it and made it again specific to HubSpot, and they know it inside and out, that's a good one. And then last, I'm just super impressed with, like, these guys are the fastest growing app in the HubSpot ecosystem, Fathom. And it's just super impressive what that product does. And it's from a product perspective, like me and Austin very much admire like the way it shares with every other content. Sorry, I haven't explained what it does.
No, I was about to say I haven't used or heard of it.
Yeah, so
we know nothing.
Yeah, so it essentially is an AI note taker for any of your calls. But the really impressive bit that I find is the summarization. Like, it is just spot on in terms of like the next steps, which in sales obviously is important for the customer to know the next steps, but also for it to be taken for you, so you both know what's coming next. That's the bit that's so impressive, and it sends that out to the customer as well automatically. So
it does a better job than a human, actually, in this case, doesn't it? Because your salespersons often will have happy ears; they'll hear the bit they want to hear. Whereas Fathom will actually pull out what the actual, what they've actually talked about, what the actual pain points are.
Yeah, and they have a good free plan that helps you get into it. And I guess that's something for us as well. We've always tried to have a really good free plan on both of the products so that people can get stuck into it. That's how they're used to buying on HubSpot. And so I do, we admire it from a product and go-to-market standpoint as well. Same with many of the other guys. Like, they're doing it the same way as HubSpot does it, which is natural to everyone there.
Love that. We've got a question, actually, which is a really great question.
Really interesting question.
How do you manage keeping teams up to date with new features? I've noticed only a small number of users adopt these easily, whilst most feel overwhelmed. Chris, do you want to start us off on that one?
Yeah, I think we all have phones, we all have hundreds of apps on there, and if we then look at the apps we actually use versus what we have, I use about 6. And I've got loads, entertaining the children, whatever it happens to be. It's really easy to get excited about something and think it's going to solve a problem for a team. And typically sales teams are the ones that we're probably talking about because they're a struggle to get them to lean in. So typically what I would advise doing is actually talking to them, almost you can use survey functionality to maybe do a CRM functionality survey, find out what they think, but get them into a room and talk to them about the problems they're experiencing, get them actually talking, use Fathom perhaps or another note taker and get that summarized, and then you actually then end up with a list of problems they have. And if you can then go back with a new app and kind of say, right, we were talking about the fact that you have real difficulty planning your trips and you don't know who to call, who to visit. We're going to implement a new app here, and we're going to upload a training video. We're going to stick it on a HubSpot dashboard showing how to use it. And we kind of drip feed them out, not everything at once, but let's get drip feed a couple out, get people using them, find out what any problems they're experiencing are. And if you can match up extensibility in the CRM to actual problems that the team are facing, then you'll find that they will tend to lean in and work with you. If you drop a ton of stuff on them, then they're going to be terrified and they're going to run for the hills.
I like that. I like the drip feed. The drip feed. Yeah, Dan, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that example, Chris, where you were showing like who's connected what, like you could see which of the sales reps. And I think the next step after that is picking one of those sales reps that are using it and getting them to talk about it within their sales meetings. Certainly that's what we find personally on the org chart side is there's usually one or two that will pick it up and take it and run with it. And they know it's important to map out the key decision makers, but you need them to then explain themselves internally why that's helping them and why it's important for them to get further adoption. So, and I think that's the case for any part of HubSpot really, or any application connected to HubSpot.
I like that. So create a champion within your team. And then as soon as they start doing well, as soon as they start closing more deals, it's going to be very evident that it works and what they're doing is different.
I think Dan has summed it up quite nicely in the chat. We treat the team like an internal target audience and solve for them. So I think, to treat people like grown-ups and solve for the problems they have rather than, the sort of kids at Christmas where you just pile all the toys on them and hope something sticks.
I think it's really important. I like what you said about asking them. So adding it into... I hope that everybody does a portal audit like every 6 months or every quarter or something. I know a lot of people don't, but you should. And adding this in there as a review of your apps is a really good way to keep on top of it, remove any that need to be removed, and just checking in with them, making sure they're being used.
Yes,
Okay.
I was going to say that was one of the comments we had in the bootcamp Slack, where somebody said that they'd audited their portal because we got them to audit their portal, and he found loads and loads of apps that were connected, didn't know anything about any of them, what they were doing, who'd implemented them. So definitely be documenting what you're adding so that your future self can be can go back and look and see what it's for, what problem it solves, and who's using it.
One last question before we'll probably have to finish. So if we can finish this and answer this question in 3 minutes, Chris. The new sales lead pipeline, Samuel loves it. It's practical. but has been holding off on training her team until she's sure there won't be any changes. Do you think the pipeline will serve as a replacement for lead status and other fields?
Yes. Simply put, I mean, I wish they'd called it something else. I think it should be called the prospect, whatever it happens to be. But a lot of people get really confused by it. I think number one, retire the lead status property. But number one, actually make a plan for what that lead process is. But part of that's going to be retiring lead status. My personal view is that go into your lifecycle stage settings and get rid of lead, call it contacts, because that again removes confusion. I think we've got too many uses of the word lead, which just get people in a terrible tizzy. I think I can't speak for the HubSpot product roadmap, but the lead object, there's a couple of betas that so you've got the view of all leads, you've got the improved lead sidebar, so the functionality is getting better and better. You've also got the chance, if you're using these, when you get the pop-ups in HubSpot to say how happy are you with X, Y, and Z, and you put a smiley face and it asks for a comment, give them your feedback, because those go straight to the product team.
And they read it and they listen and they love it.
I know this because I want to put everyone should have a pay rise, and somebody wrote me an email and said thanks.
Thanks, but you don't make that decision.
do give feedback. But it's very much a case of with the leads object, think it through, process map, work out where all the potential issues are, and solve for it as part of your whole process. So think about that contact to lead through the lead stages to deal into the pipeline and what you're going to do going on from there. Perfect.
Thank you, Chris. And that's brought us up right to time. So if anyone else has any more questions, do drop them in the chat. But I think we've covered the most.
And if there's any more apps you'd like to see,
I do think we need to
see if we get some people.
A quarterly thing.
Because I think we were thinking about having sort of several on this, and it just came to the point where we want to give each thing a sort of have a proper look and give people a chance to have a proper look at that. So if there is anything you really want to see, do let us know, and Bridget will wave her magic wand and make it happen.
I'll stalk them until they say yes to come on. So, which is what I did to Dan.
Is that what happened to you, Dan?
No, thank you for inviting us on. As I said earlier, like it's long overdue. We should have come to you earlier on it.
But no, I love what you're doing with it. It's it just looks so much more powerful and so much more useful, and really boosts what you've got in HubSpot.
Yes. And that's the point of these apps, isn't it? Is to just expand on what you've already got, which Dan, you've done really well. So thank you so much for joining us. Anyone else, if you've got any questions, hit any of us up on LinkedIn and we'll answer them. And I'll make sure to send the recording out. Links to all of the apps that we've spoken about, like Superd and Arrows, etc. So you can go and have a look for yourselves, and hopefully you'll get one of them on in the future as well. But yeah, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Chris. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a lovely day.